उन्होंने थोड़ा Auzubillahiminash-shaytanir-rajeem. Bismillahir-rahmanir-rahim. Assalamualaikum and a very warm welcome to World This Morning. And I'm your host Hajra Satti, and joining me is my co-host, a wonderful co-host Fahim Bangesh. Assalamualaikum Fahim, and how are you doing today?
Walaikum assalam Hajra. I'm doing wonderful, but I have to add that it's still very humid. We were quite happy in the recent past, a couple of days back, that okay, the rains are coming, perhaps the humidity is going to go. But it's still here and I'm still perspiring. So
That's true. That's true, and we can certainly see that Fahim is sweating profusely. And we are certainly going to talk about the weather patterns and the abnormalities in this weather pattern, because after the monsoon, we expect the humidity level to dip down significantly, but that is not happening in the first place. And why it's not happening, this is something which should bother us as a generation, because this is, as Antonio Guterres says, the last chance at saving the humanity in the first place from the adverse effects of the climate change. But I don't know if the clock is ticking and we have reached that tipping point or crossed that tipping point where we can actually save our planet Earth, our Mother Nature Earth. And whenever we disturb the natural patterns of Mother Nature, nature always comes to strike back at us, and at a worst possible way.
You're quite right, Hajra, in saying that, because I was watching this docu-series and it was by David Attenborough, narrated by him, and he said that this is indeed our last chance. And still, there is certainly hope in saving the planet, because definitely we are looking at something. We're looking at the next generation. We're looking at them living a healthy life, and we're hoping that they can live a healthy life in the future. But we don't see that happening if the patterns that we're seeing as far as the pollution is concerned, as far as the human intervention in nature is concerned, if they keep on continuing.
That's very true, and we will definitely talk in a detail about how it's going to happen. But before that, we have the top story. So Fahim, why don't you go and do the honors?
Of course, well, talking about the United Nations General Assembly session, the caretaker Prime Minister Anwarul Haqqaqat, he's basically left for the United States on a 5-day visit, where he will be addressing the 78th United States General Assembly session in New York. Also, the interim Prime Minister will also be holding meetings with the world leaders on the sidelines of this session. Apart from the United Nations General Assembly meeting, he will also participate in an important conference on climate change. Mr. Anwarul Haqqaqat will be meeting representatives of the international media and will also be visiting prominent think tanks of the United States.
I think that's a pretty important development, considering the fact that that is the gathering of the global leaders on a very important forum, and Pakistan, as the member of South Asian country, holds a very significant influence, and I would like to characterize it that because we are sitting in a geographical region with so many, I would say, the joint points that we can have to fight against the climate change, and lots of fight against it. We can talk about it, but obviously, having said so, we will be very interested in what Prime Minister has to say about her country.
You know, you're right, Hajra, because we people living in Pakistan, we live in a very hostile region. And this region has to be, of course, you're quite right, or any head of state of this region needs to go and meet the heads of state of the, as they say, the global north, and meeting the heads of developed countries, of course, will be helping Pakistan, and the Prime Minister or any head of state of this region will be able to highlight the problems that we are having, the people and the citizens of Pakistan are having due to climate change, due to financial crises, or any other matter for that matter.
That's very true. And now let's move on to and kickstart a conversation and come to our segment, which is linked with, of course, the industry and academia linkages. since Fahim, you and I are both graduates of the university, and we can feel that discrepancy, that the number of graduates that the universities are churning out, they're not absorbed by the market. And obviously there's always a discrepancy there in the absorption, demand and supply gap. But I would like to quote few statistics here, that Pakistan has been ranked 99 among the 132 economies in the Global Innovation Index, and that is something which is very concerning, because obviously Pakistanis or the Pakistani young people, they have a very fertile mind when it comes to innovation, and especially when they are absorbed in the industries across the world, especially in the Western capital, you will see how flourishing they are. But our universities, are they giving us that sort of an ecosystem where they can actually flourish and where they actually are looked after when they go to the job markets in the first place?
You're quite right, Hajra, because that's the whole point here. Because are we teaching our students what needs to be taught? Because obviously when they come into the practical life, things seem to be quite different. Myself as an example, when I graduated, when I came into the practical field, things were not as we studied. You know, we study basically a perfect system. This is how it's supposed to be done. But when we get into a proper practical, pragmatic environment, we see politics that we have to deal with. We see different aspects of mental health that we have to deal with. And obviously, it's not just the technical area of your studies that's required, because these areas should also be taught as far as mental health is concerned, dealing with people is concerned, art of living is concerned. I think they're quite pertinent to be taught in the universities, because they are they teach you the art of living, basically.
True. And without any further ado, we would like to introduce our guest. She is not just a beauty with brains, but she has also been conferred Tamgha Imtiaz, and she happens to be working at a university which it was my university back in those days, and I have lots of good memories with my university, that is the NAS. We are very glad that we have been joined by Miss Arooba Gillani. Assalamu alaikum, and thank you so much for coming to our show.
Thank you so much for having me here.
Wonderful.
Pleasure.
Ms. Arooba, since you're dealing with the industry and academia linkages in the NUST, and I would like to say that the NUST is one of the most beautiful university, not just with the manicured lawns and very good infrastructure, but also its ranking is always #1 when it comes to that, right? So how are you looking after your alumni who graduate and who are in the job market in the first place, or who might not get the job in the first place?
So every year we try to keep in touch with them through various means. I mean, through various programs, we conduct surveys, then we try to keep in touch with them, we keep a track. And also we have a whole directorate actually who's looking after alumni. So we try to really take care of them. We actually map their careers, and then whenever there is a position matching with their profile, we always contact them for that.
Right. And please tell us about the ecosystem of the NUST, because obviously I'm a graduate of the NUST, so I know what is the ecosystem, but for the viewers out there who are not aware of that, and what are the achievements when we talk about the industry academia linkages in the first place? Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Haja, for asking me this. So let me explain you, how do you differentiate between a good university and a mediocre university?
Yes, sure.
So at NUST, we are not just teaching, but we are also giving them a whole ecosystem. For example, if you talk about entrepreneurship, for example, from teaching entrepreneurship in a course to actually having a whole ecosystem from startups, from incubation centers to a whole national science and technology park where we are actually teaching them how to do businesses. And when it comes to your careers, we are actually giving them a whole coaching, mentoring, ecosystem where we are actually teaching them how to conduct themselves, how to develop a CV, how to present yourself to the industry partners. So it's a whole kind of a program that we actually make them go through in their 4 years degree program during their undergraduate. So I think that's what's more important, that how you prepare or how well you prepare your graduates for the job market.
Lovely. And you spoke about a good university and a mediocre university, right? So how many universities do you think are the mediocre universities? Because we are producing a lot of graduates. Every semester. There are a lot of graduates coming in the market. And I think the majority of them are coming from mediocre universities. So what future do you see of those graduates? Because not all the universities are doing what you people are doing. for the alumni.
Yeah, so it's not, when I say mediocre, I don't mean that they're not teaching what we are teaching, or they don't have kind of faculty that we have. It's not just about that.
It's this the placement that you're talking about, which is I think a brilliant step that you people are taking for the future of all the students which are going out, which are the graduates of NUST University. So
So first, the industrial linkages, which are very, very important. So we literally have industrial liaison officer in every school. Then we have officers in our headquarter level, where we have strategies developed for every sector, how to tap into that sector. For example, Gujranwala, Gujarat, we have a different strategy for them, and then Karachi and Faisalabad and Sialkot and Lahore and Islamabad, we have a different strategy for that. That's how we've developed our linkages. But then talking about international linkages, I think we're the only university in the world who've established linkages of this kind. For example, very recently we've set up a Pakistan-Japan Center for Mutual Cooperation. It's by the support of both the embassies, Embassy of Pakistan in Japan, also Embassy of Japan in Pakistan, and both the ambassadors actually came here to NUST and inaugurated the center. So it is by, if you allow, can I explain about that? Okay, so with the aging population of Japan, they actually contacted our embassy in Japan, and they said that if we can actually convince them to have our graduates as their resource people to develop smart cities and super cities in Japan. And it was then that the ambassador came all the way to NUST to see the ecosystem and our graduates and meet our management. And then he was really impressed by the kind of graduates that we are producing here and the kind of ecosystem that we have, and very kind of him that through a private partner, we've been able to establish country's first Pakistan-Japan Center for Mutual Cooperation. So we are literally giving them about 1 million IT professionals out of the 8 million demand that they have. Yeah.
And why not the 7 million, the rest of that?
No. Are we producing that much? We really need to have, we really need to match the quality as well. So I mean, if you talk about NUST, so every year about 1,500 students are engineering students.
Right.
So also we have a very set demand that we are catering to, and also we have competitors, international competitors. So we are also the only university in the world to sign the MOU with the Presidency of Turkey for the exchange of human resource. So they've never signed any such kind of an MOU with any university in the world.
Right. And can you also shed the light on the significance of that, the agreement that you had with the Turkey? What does that mean? How does that plays out? And what sort of, help can you provide to the students when it comes to the placements in the market? So
Haja, as you know that all the disciplines that we are offering do not really have the demand all the time in the country, right?
That's true.
So that's why we really need to go and find placements, all across the globe for them. For example, avionics, aerospace engineering. So we are having connections with Turkish Aerospace.
Wonderful.
We are the only university to have their, a design lab outside Turkey.
Right.
So that's the kind of collaboration we are having, and that's why we were able to place our graduates there in Turkey as well as in Japan as well as other countries. So right now we have about 26 international companies in our National Science and Technology Park who are also obviously recruiting our graduates as well as doing their businesses. And we have about 4 to 5 recruitment centers, international recruitment centers in NUST, including Japan and USA and Turkey.
And often when we talk about avionics, when we talk about technical fields, we speak about our neighboring country as well. If we compare this university with the universities in the neighboring country, how would you rank? Obviously, you said international liaisons are one thing, that's you the only university which is doing that. But apart from that, if you talk about the industry liaisons, do you think they are doing better than us as a country overall?
They're also doing actually, but so placements and international linkages have a very direct impact on whatever government policies we have, right?
Right.
So we really need to convince them to come here, conduct recruitment drives maybe, or have their set up offices over here in NUST or in Pakistan. So that is a challenge, but I would like to share one thing, that our ranking actually speaks volumes. For example, we are ranked in about top 140 IT schools in the world.
Wonderful.
Also, we have just ranked by the QS World Ranks, which is the most credible world rankings in the world from UK. we are at 93rd position in the world in terms of employers' reputation.
Okay.
So that's
Lovely.
one element, which means that the kind of credibility and trust that we've developed over the years, about our product that we're producing every year, which is our graduates, of course.
Wonderful. And obviously, let's talk about the lags which are happening between the market and the, I would say, academia linkages in the first place, right? So curriculum is written probably decades ago or many years ago, and you see that the market is constantly changing on a daily basis. And now with the advent of the artificial intelligence and a very rapidly changing environment, obviously there's a lot which the curriculum does not teach us in the first place, right? So how do you deal with this discrepancy in the first place? Because I have the experience of teaching, and I certainly witnessed that there are some minds which are very reluctant to incorporate the changes fastly.
Oh, true.
I mean, fastly paced changes which are happening around the world, right? Because they say that, it has been approved and it's very difficult task getting it reapproved and incorporating all of those changes, and obviously that hinders the innovation aspect of that, right?
Course,
and that is why
definitely.
Pakistan has been ranked as 99 among the 132 economies when it comes to the innovation, right? So how do you deal with that, being the best university of
So
Pakistan?
Haja, I mean, universities are there to teach you the basics, right? And the advanced level courses.
Right.
Innovation comes from the industry, okay? So there is a gap from the industry actually.
Okay.
We are always constantly looking for partners who can actually come and have, for example, labs developed at our premises,
Right.
where students can actually go work, learn, and do innovation. But
Right.
who's going to fund that? That's the whole thing. I mean, we are here to teach the courses. We are here to teach, give the learning aspect to the graduate. But what about the industry's contribution in the
Right.
academia? That's more important. Actually, we need to actually, educate our industry partners and our chambers maybe to look into this, because if they are not going to contribute, from their side, how are we going to actually bring revolution? That's the whole thing.
That's very true, but don't you think it's also the responsibility of the university in the first place, I mean, upgrading their labs and whatnot, because obviously when you're teaching the students, it's your responsibility in the
Of
first
course, but then that's required a lot of funding and everything. But we are actually doing that.
Okay.
We are doing that, but I mean, when you talk about industry and academia linkage, we are the ones who are actually going to them and for final year projects, for funding,
Right.
for events, for everything, for conferences.
Right.
But what about the industry? How many industries are actually, adding to the academia? That's
Right.
the whole question. We are always going to them, but are they coming to us as well?
You're right, actually, because I remember when I was in the university, some of my class fellows had gone into the engineering field, and two of them had gotten into mechatronics, I remember, mechanical and electronic engineering. And interestingly, they could not find a job in Pakistan because the industry had no liaison A with the university, and B, there was no demand. There was no research. There was nothing of that sort. They had to go abroad in order to pursue their education, their field. So how is that coming along in terms of development, in terms of the demand of the industry, in terms of as far as the growth and development of different sectors is concerned, which we're teaching to our students in the universities?
Yeah, so there was a time when there was demand only for mechanical engineers. And before that, it was only civil engineering.
That's true.
Nobody even knew that data science is also an engineering discipline,
true.
right?
That's true.
So that's how we are also, educating the industry and creating demand. Actually, when you actually launch a degree program, you have to create demand for that degree program as well. So we are actually, telling them, okay, this candidate is going to be producing better results than this candidate because he's been taught this. He's going to be contributing more to your business. So we are actually telling them this.
So then that is the responsibility
That is the
of the
responsibility of the university, actually. Whatever you're producing, you're able to sell that in the market.
Right, and one last question before we wrap up our segment, which is related to the research and development.
Yeah.
And we know that Pakistan does not fare very well when it comes to the research and development. And I think in the last budget, the amount allocated was below 1%, which is really, really scary in the first place, right? And without research and development, you cannot, compete with the market in the first place.
You cannot,
of course, right? So as a university, how much do you guys devote to the research and development, and what is your response when it comes to it?
Okay, so let's go back to where the discussion actually started. So talking about the research, we have a whole office of Office Research, Innovation and Commercialization. And when we talk about less good universities, I'm not going to say mediocre again, but that's when you don't really have an active ORIC.
Okay.
Which is Office of Research, Innovation and Commercialization, right? You're only teaching graduates and you're not bringing in the commercialization, innovation and research element to that, right? So that's where NUST actually stands out, because we have a very active research, innovation and commercialization, not just office but whole secretariat headed by a pro-rector, which means that's the level of seriousness that we have, and that's how serious we take research, innovation and commercialization. So of course a lot of budget goes into research, a lot of funding goes into research, a lot of efforts actually goes into innovation and commercialization.
No, definitely this is something revolutionary that you people are doing, because like you said, not just in Pakistan but in the entire world, you people are having international liaisons, you people are doing so much for the students, and I'm sure when they graduate out of NUST they'll have something to look forward to in their lives. They won't be like a herd of sheep moving here and there, not finding a job. And I'm sure this is a model that many of the other universities should also follow and take seriously, and not just say it but actually implement that in their universities, right, Hajra?
That's very true, and thank you so much for very brilliantly putting it out there, because when we talk about the students or the graduates who are churned out by the university, so they are often, I would like to say, facing that the beautiful theory is clashing with the very ugly reality, because obviously there is not enough space in the market to absorb them. But what differentiates is that how you stand out in the market in the first place, right, Fahim? And with that, we would like to say thank you to Ms. Arooba for coming here.
And before we say thank you, just a message that you would like to give to the government, perhaps, because there are many bottlenecks that the universities, when they take innovative steps, they do, of course, face a lot of bottlenecks. So any message that you'd like to give to the government, to the society, to the students who want to pursue their education in NUST?
Yeah. So a country's biggest asset is, of course, youth.
That's true.
You just need to derive them. You need to give them direction. And that's where you need to have, whatever policies you make, whatever you do, in terms of development and growth of the country, if it is not youth-centric, maybe we need to look into it then, because that's where our future lies. It's more important to focus on youth. And when we talk about youth, it's the first thing that comes into our minds is, of course, education.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Ms. Arooba Gillani. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your presence here. And I'm sure we all got enlightened by A, what you do, and B, what NUST is doing, and C, a model for all the universities to follow, that perhaps all the, like you very rightly use the term, churning out of the graduates that we're watching and we're witnessing in Pakistan from different universities, that they have something to look forward to. They have a guideline, they have a path to follow in the real life, and they won't be disappointed with the ugly realities of life, and they would know where they're going, how they're going about it. So, well, we'll come up with a very interesting discussion, a very interesting person in our second segment. So don't go anywhere. We will be back after a short break. Stay tuned.
Welcome back, and before going on to the break, we alluded to a very interesting conversation that we are going to have in this segment, and obviously which is linked to the climate change and the atmospheric, or I would say the weather changes that we are witnessing nowadays, especially in Islamabad, because being a resident of Islamabad, Fahim, I can vouch for the fact that Islamabad used to have a very moderate temperature, right? Yes. We used to have monsoon season, which was a bit harsh to bear, but I think it was for 1 month, and after that we used to have a very pleasant evenings in Islamabad, but now every night I think we are having the rain, but especially in the mornings or in the daytime, there's so much humidity.
The humidity levels are not decreasing at all, because this time everyone is actually crying out, when is this heat, when is this summer going to end? Even my own son, you know, he used to be very sick and tired of the cold season because he used to get allergies. And now he's like, you know, Baba, I really want winters to come now, because I don't want to sweat anymore. I want to go out and play in the sun. I want to enjoy the sun, because he hasn't been able to do that since a very long time.
That's very true. And in order to inquire why we witness such sort of anomalies in the weather pattern, we are very glad that someone has joined in our studio who happens to be a very favorite environmentalist. He happens to be Dr. Ijaz Ahmed Saab. Assalamu alaikum, sir, and thank you so much for coming to our show.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure, Ijaz Saab. It's a pleasure. So, Ijaz Saab, like we just talked about the monsoon season, the humidity, the heat, and people all over Pakistan, especially this region, have been complaining that this year there is something different, there is something peculiar going on this year, because the humidity levels are still there, above 60% perhaps, or at times 70%. So, sir, why is this so?
Well, I think as you mentioned earlier in the intro, climate change is already on its way, and now it is time that we have started facing the impacts of this climate change globally, and that is one of the issue that the Western world, the developed countries were not recognizing that global warming is going on, or the weather is changing, or climate is changing. And they were quite reluctant to actually, commit anything globally, because they were not facing these issues. But over a period of time now, we have seen that things have changed globally. The temperature, the heat wave in Europe, the winds and storms and floods and the heavy rains in US have actually made them recognize that this is an issue, and whatever was happening in the eastern part of the world or southern part of the world is a reality. So, it is a recognition. So, based on that, I think when we talk about climate change, of course, there are many different indicators and signs, whether it is flood, whether it is unprecedented rains, glacier melts, or whatever, something associated with high temperatures or even low temperatures, snowfall. These are some of the indicators that have actually started showing up now at it, peak time, I would say. And we have witnessed floods in Indus about a year ago, and this year also we have seen some floods in those rivers which were not part of the Indus, but they were actually some floods in different parts of Pakistan. And similarly, the temperature, the June was the coldest June in during this year
ever experienced by Islamabad. That's true.
So and then this the weather that we are talking about, and you mentioned, both of you mentioned about this scenario where we are getting more rains, and this is going to happen. It will continue for another week or so. So what happens is that when you have more moisture, ultimately the daytime temperature actually is during the day it's a bit warm, and during night it rains, or early in the morning it rains. Very interesting observation. I had some problems, so I went to doctor. I got tested for vitamin D, and it was mentioned that deficient in vitamin C. So doctor asked me to take 1 hour of sunshine early in the morning, and I have been doing it. But interestingly, early in the morning there is hardly any sunshine. It's cloudy.
That's true.
Yeah, And so I don't know what is the level of my vitamin D now,
Right.
but this is like something which is a change, overall scenario has changed.
Right.
So the temperature during the daytime is more than like normal. So the evaporation and like the phenomena of humidity increase. So that's like it continuously increasing.
Right.
And even in Karachi, I was reading that it went up to 80 plus or something like that, which
Oh
is
my God.
not bearable actually.
Of course.
It is
Yeah.
not bearable. That's true, because in the peak of monsoons, we did have 80+% humidity, and it
Oh
was
my
even
God.
difficult to breathe outside.
That's very true. And sir, I wanted to bring your attention to an important factor, which is that are there studies being commissioned to, study this weather pattern, specifically when we talk about Islamabad or Pakistan in particular, because we're witnessing very harmful effects of that. And it's not just the weather that is getting affected. It's us, the livelihoods have been affected, our GDP is getting affected, our economy is getting affected. And last year we had some $40 billion of the losses that were incurred by the climate losses in the first place, right? And secondly, let's talk about the loss and damage fund, which was established last year in order to combat that, and people pledged $100 billion. But as the 24/7 news cycle moves on, do you think that the donor fatigue has set in? People are now, especially the West, which has created this problem in the first place, is reluctant to even fund that, because they think that they are doing it as a favor to the countries which are vulnerable, like Pakistan in the first place.
Well, too many questions. I hope I will remember.
Sure.
Well, as far as data collection is concerned, I think the Pakistan Meteorological Department has some quite satisfactory equipments, and they have better prediction models now, and things have improved, but not to that level where we would like to see them, like coming up with maybe hourly predictions or even less than that. And it is also specifically for certain cities of Pakistan. So we need to get more data on more regular basis, and have more indicators which actually would help in planning. Things have improved a lot in this scenario. As far as loss and damage is concerned, before that you mentioned about I think weather and issues related to GDP. Yes, I think this is something which we need to look and relate the change in weather, how it is related to economy, how it is related to livelihood of people, how it is related to food security, because that is a very important aspect. I'll just give example of one of the area near Rawalpindi, Islamabad, Haripur. I met with one of the farmer, and he said that he was trying to actually sow something, but he could not, because there was not enough water, or like moisture. There was too much moisture in the land, so he was unable to plow it. So the whole season actually went. He could not actually get the crop. Because of that, because there is a particular season in which you can sow to get a better yield. Otherwise, you will have to give more inputs and then less production product or the crop. So he only found time when it was not appropriate to sow. So he could not actually like earn. So it is going to be a big issue ultimately related to food security. So I mean, like, just imagine what will happen if we have the same situation at the time of sowing of wheat. So we do have some some seeds which we can which we can grow earlier or a bit late, but then you have to have more inputs. So ultimately the cost of like getting a gram of wheat will increase, which is already at a higher side now. So as far as loss and damage is concerned, and I'm glad that I remember all the three questions. Loss and damage, I think it is very political, geopolitical situation. There are many countries who actually pledge who say that we are going to donate this much amount for such and such activity, but ultimately when it comes to the actual contribution,
Right.
there are question marks.
That's
So that does not happen. There are some other mechanism like Green Climate Fund,
right.
Global Environment Facility, etc.,
True.
which are accessible and they are operational. And recently Government of Pakistan and WWF Pakistan got this project related to Recharge Pakistan,
Okay.
which is more related to watershed, water management,
True.
and it is I think somewhere close to $70 million US.
Right.
So we need to build capacity in this area also, how to actually access the funds. That is also very important.
Because, sir, you mentioned this really interesting fact about food security, right? And I think the food security is not just relevant to crops, but also when we talk about the food cycle, when we talk about
Yes.
animals, when we talk about, because often I mention this documentary that I watched about our planet, and the way animals are going extinct, the way because of human intervention they're not being able to find food, and the whole food cycle is getting disrupted. It's because it used to be like in a flow. Everything was balanced in a flow. Things were available for animals to eat, but
Yeah.
now, due to the dryness of the rivers in some areas, the fish are not able to go, the bears are starving,
Yeah.
so many animals who are committing suicide unknowingly because they can't find food. And elephants, they're very good at where they go and find water. The older elephants tell the younger elephants that okay, you can find water in these places, but when they go there is no water.
That's true.
And it's a very, very sad situation,
Yes.
sir.
I think we always forget the connectivity and linkages.
True.
So there is, like in nature, everything is linked with the other. So and wherever like we fail in identifying that linkage, then it is a disaster. Whether and it's very interesting to understand the whole mechanism, the whole food chain. For example, if like a honeybee or a bee or a butterfly or some insect is a pollinator, and because of the climate change and raise in temperature, if the if the flowers on different wild plants, they are delayed, they are late. So then like the whole pollination process will suffer, which means then like the overall average production will also suffer. There are some studies in US, in California especially, the orange is one of the famous crop in California.
Right.
Because of decline in the pollinator, they lost I think few billion US dollars because of the quantity of oranges were not good enough because of disruption in the system. So these are very important linkages, as you mentioned, be it like animal, be it insects, be it pollinator. Every one has its own role.
True.
So if that role is like minimized or reduced, so ultimately in few years time we'll see what happens.
And Dr. Saab, let's talk about what's wrong with the way we are living that is producing such sort of changes, because obviously in Pakistan we are witnessing that there are floods coming in, and floods with such a huge intensity that we have never witnessed before, right? So last year our 3 provinces were submerged under that water.
True.
There was so much intensity of the water, and no matter how much government prepared for that, the water influx was so huge
Yes.
that we were unable to absorb that water, right? So what is it that is what we are doing wrong, especially when we talk about the global community in the first place? And let's address the elephant in the room, which is capitalism, right? The very unsustainable model of living and how we have adopted the luxuries which are becoming our necessities in the first place.
I think capitalism has led to the climate change.
Yes, it I mean, like it is one of the important aspect that we always ignore. And mainly, like when you talk about, we follow that. In
Right.
Pakistan, we are following it. I always say number of vehicles, every house. I remember, I mean, like used to live in Islamabad since, like long now, 50 years plus. So I remember public transport was available.
Yeah.
People would actually prefer public transport to go to Rawalpindi. I used to go to Rawalpindi for my college education, and people would prefer. There were double deckers and like all those facilities available. But now in my house, we have 4 brothers. Everybody has a car, maybe 2 cars.
Right.
So the living standards have changed. Living style has changed. We used to live in one house. Now we have 4 houses. So and what happens basically, if you don't have public transport, you have more cars.
That's true.
More cars mean more emission.
True.
More cars mean widening of roads,
True.
which means compromise on the forest, on vegetation, which basically means that you are reducing the absorption capacity of the soil because when it rains,
of the earth.
yes, exactly.
Yes.
So that is another, they absorb water, soil absorb water, and then if it is like thick forest, they will absorb more water. And you will reduce flash floods.
Right.
So then that is I am talking about at individual level in Islamabad. But when you actually expand it, there are so many new housing colonies and all over Islamabad. Like you are just next to Texla, and like there are many housing colonies which are actually part of Texla. Similarly, if you go to Rawat or Barakau, you see there is expansion mushrooming growth, unplanned growth. But what is happening is we are compromising on the land, which is more productive land. We are cutting more forests, more trees, and in addition we are contributing in the form of air pollution and etc., more carbon footprint. So ultimately we are at the losing end. We are not thinking that okay, we need to actually look into new cities instead of like expanding the cities so they are manageable.
True.
There are more facilities available, whether it's transportation or whatever. That is not happening. So ultimately, like these flash floods, when we see mountains with buildings, then the water will react differently as compared to mountains with vegetation, mountains with trees, and mountains are nails on the earth. That's what Quran says. So that we are basically, like what happens if the nails are, removed, the building or the furniture or whatever, the binding will actually finish. So we are trying to, like unbind and things become loose, and ultimately whatever happens, it comes back to us.
Right, and very rightly, Dr. Saab, you mentioned, because when I went to northern areas, Fahim, and I could literally see that the way our people have denuded the mountains there, and the mountains they were traveling. So you can see a lot of landslides there, and like you mentioned that they are the nails which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created on the planet Earth. And obviously when the nail is disturbed, obviously entire balance is disturbed, and you can see the adverse effects of that, especially in the form of the climate change. But thank you so much, Dr. Saab, for coming here, for having this wonderful cross-pollination of the ideas in the form of the climate change. And it is high time that as a human, as someone who belongs to this society and who is going to and have been affected by the climate change, that we reduce our carbon footprint in the first place and make sure that we contribute our responsibility in making this world more